Remember all those crazy floods that hit Australia last year?
Oh, yeah.
Or those heat waves that were scorching North America?
It's crazy, right?
Well, it turns out that there's this climate pattern behind a lot of these wild weather events,
Mm-hmm.
and it's called La Niña.
La Niña.
And for those of you out there who are prepping for the UPSC,
Yeah.
this one is something you've got to know.
Oh, this is a must-know for sure.
Absolutely a must.
Yeah. La Niña.
La Niña, which means the little girl in Spanish.
Oh.
Might sound kind of innocent,
Right.
but trust me, it's a major player in global weather.
Wow.
And it can have a huge impact on everything from agriculture to disaster preparedness, topics that you might see pop up in both the mains and the prelims exam.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So La Niña,
Mm-hmm.
is it like a mini ice age hitting the Pacific, or what's the deal here?
Not quite an ice age,
Okay.
but it does involve cooling.
Okay.
So imagine like a giant pool,
Okay.
the Pacific Ocean.
And usually there's this warm patch in the central and eastern parts.
Hmm.
But during La Niña, those areas get unusually chilly.
Oh, wow.
It's all part of a natural cycle called the El Niño Southern Oscillation,
Oh, boy.
or what we call NSO for short.
And so got it.
Yeah, think of it like a climate seesaw
Okay.
that tilts between warmer El Niño,
Uh-huh.
cooler La Niña, and then a neutral phase in between.
So La Niña is basically the cold setting on the Pacific Ocean's thermostat.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
But how does this chilly water affect the rest of the world?
Well, it's all about those massive trade winds that blow across the Pacific.
Okay.
During La Niña, these winds get supercharged,
Wow.
pushing that warm water west like a giant broom,
Yeah.
And this causes a chain reaction,
Okay.
bringing up cooler water from the depths in the east.
Interesting.
And that shift in ocean temperature,
Yeah.
it messes with weather patterns across the globe.
So it's like La Niña sets off this chain reaction, causing weather chaos in its wake. And we're not just talking about like a quick blip, right?
Yeah,
These La Niña periods can stick around for a while.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We're talking 2 to 7 years,
Wow.
often right after an El Niño event.
Hmm.
In fact, we just came out of a 3-year La Niña phase in 2023.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this recent one was a bit of an oddball.
Ooh. I love a good mystery.
Yeah.
What made it so unusual?
Well, first off, it showed up fashionably late,
Okay.
emerging later than expected.
Interesting.
And while it still had an impact,
Mm.
it was milder than usual.
Mm.
Scientists are now thinking that this overall warming of the planet
Right.
might be messing with La Niña's usual intensity.
So even La Niña isn't immune to climate change's influence.
It seems that way.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm betting relevant for those UPSC exams.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
How does a weaker La Niña actually play out on the ground in different parts of the world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
Because La Niña doesn't play favorites.
Okay.
Its effects can be drastically different depending on which part of the world you're in.
Gotcha.
For example, it can be a boon for some agricultural regions and a total disaster for others.
Okay, so we've got this milder than usual La Niña impacting different regions in unique ways.
Absolutely.
Let's break it down starting with Asia.
Okay.
What should our UPSC aspirants know about its impact there?
For India,
Okay.
the impact of La Niña on the monsoon season is crucial.
Right.
La Niña usually brings above-average rainfall,
Okay.
which can be great news for rice production.
Right, of course.
However, too much rain can sometimes hurt other crops, like pulses,
Okay.
especially in regions like the Indo-Gangetic Plains.
Gotcha.
So it's a mixed bag,
Yeah.
which is something to keep in mind for the mains exam.
Right, because a good understanding of these regional nuances is key
Oh, absolutely.
for tackling those mains questions.
For sure.
What about other parts of Asia?
Yeah.
Does La Niña shake things up there as well?
Definitely.
Aye.
Take Southeast Asia, for example.
Right.
Countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines often see a surge in rainfall during La Niña.
Interesting.
This can be a boon for key crops like rice and palm oil,
Okay.
but also increases the risk of flooding,
Right.
impacting infrastructure and communities.
Yeah.
This is definitely something to consider for both the mains and prelims,
Yeah.
as it highlights the complex interplay between climate, agriculture, and disaster management.
So it's all about balance, or rather the disruption of balance.
Yeah.
La Niña can bring abundance, but also potential risks.
Right.
What about South America?
Okay.
How does this climate pattern play out on that continent?
South America is a fascinating case study
Okay.
because La Niña hits different parts of the continent in completely opposite ways.
Oh, wow.
You've got the southern countries like Argentina, Brazil, and parts of Chile.
Yeah.
They often get slammed with drier conditions, even drought.
Wow.
And that's a big deal for their soybean and maize production.
Right.
Major agricultural exports.
So while India's farmers might be happy with the extra rain, their counterparts in South America could be facing serious crop losses.
Absolutely.
It's a stark reminder of how interconnected our global food systems are.
Yeah.
And definitely something to note for the UPSC Mains exam.
For sure. Absolutely.
And the irony is, while the South is parched, the northern parts of South America, like Colombia and Venezuela, often see the opposite.
Oh, wow.
Increased rainfall and even flooding.
Really?
It just goes to show that La Niña's impact is all about location, location, location.
La Niña, the ultimate real estate agent.
Exactly.
Deciding who gets rain and who gets drought.
That's right.
Okay, let's move on to Africa.
Okay.
How does this climate pattern impact such a vast and diverse continent?
Well, just like in South America, you see this stark contrast in La Niña's effects.
Yeah. Depending on which part of Africa you're looking at.
Okay.
East Africa, for example,
Right.
usually gets hit with drier conditions, especially during crucial growing seasons.
Oh, no.
This can lead to reduced crop yields and potential food shortages.
All right.
A major concern for a region already facing numerous challenges.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It can be.
Especially considering the existing vulnerabilities in parts of East Africa.
Absolutely.
This connection between climate patterns and food security is a major theme in the UPSC syllabus. So definitely worth paying attention to.
For sure.
What about Southern Africa?
Okay.
Does La Niña bring the same dry conditions there?
Actually, it's the reverse.
Oh, really?
Southern Africa often sees above average rainfall during La Niña.
Wow.
Which is generally good news for their agriculture.
Okay.
Crops like maize, sorghum, and even soybeans can thrive in these wetter conditions.
So you see, even within the same continent,
Yeah.
La Niña can be a double-edged sword. It really highlights the complexity of these climate patterns.
It does.
And how their impacts ripple through different regions, economies, and even political landscapes.
For sure.
Speaking of dramatic landscapes, let's hop over to Oceania.
Okay.
How does La Niña treat Australia?
Australia is particularly sensitive to La Niña.
Okay.
And often not in a good way. The northern and eastern parts of the country typically experience a significant increase in rainfall.
Oh, wow.
Often leading to those widespread and devastating floods we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, those images of flooded towns and farms in Australia were hard to forget.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it sounds like La Niña plays a major role in exacerbating these extreme weather events.
It does.
This is a perfect example of how understanding climate patterns is crucial for disaster preparedness.
Oh, yeah.
Another important topic for the UPSC exams.
Yes.
Now, last but not least, let's head north to North America.
All right.
How does La Niña impact this vast landmass?
North America also gets a taste of La Niña's contrasting effects. The southern states, think Texas, Arizona, even California, often experience drier conditions, while up north, in Canada and Alaska, it's the opposite. More precipitation, stronger storms, and generally wetter weather.
So it's a tale of two extremes.
Exactly.
A parched south and a soggy north. La Niña really does like to keep things interesting.
It does.
Or should I say unpredictable.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked a lot about La Niña's global impacts.
We have.
But let's zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture.
Okay.
We keep mentioning this El Niño Southern Oscillation, or ENSO.
Yeah.
For our UPSC aspirants who might be scratching their heads. Can you break down what exactly ENSO is?
Sure.
And how it all ties together?
Of course. Think of ENSO as like the grand conductor of the global climate orchestra.
Okay.
And La Niña is one of its key instruments.
Interesting.
Essentially, ENSO is this natural climate pattern that involves changes in the Pacific Ocean's surface temperature. Those changes, whether warmer or cooler, then have a domino effect on weather patterns around the world.
Wow.
So we're talking rainfall patterns, wind strength, even the intensity of storms.
It's all interconnected.
It is.
ENSO is like the puppet master pulling the strings of global weather.
Yeah.
And La Niña is one of its most dramatic puppets.
One of the most dramatic, for sure.
But how do scientists actually figure out when La Niña is going to show up? Do they have some sort of climate crystal ball?
I wish it were that simple.
Right.
But it does involve some pretty cool tech and some serious brain power.
Okay.
Scientists use a mix of climate models, which are like super sophisticated computer simulations of the Earth's climate system, and observational data from things like ocean buoys and satellites to try and predict La Niña events.
So it's like having a global network of climate spies.
Yeah.
Constantly feeding information back to headquarters.
Yes, exactly.
That data must be mind-boggling.
Oh, it is.
How do they make sense of it all?
They look for specific patterns and anomalies that signal a La Niña event is brewing. For example, they use something called the Oceanic Niño Index, or ONI.
ONI, got it.
Which tracks sea surface temperatures in the Pacific and compares them to a 30-year average. If those temperatures dip below a certain threshold for a sustained period, bingo, it's La Niña time.
So it's all about spotting those telltale signs hidden within the data.
Exactly.
Kind of like a climate detective story.
It is.
But even with all this technology and expertise, predicting La Niña must be a challenge, right?
You're absolutely right. It's a complex system, and there's always a degree of uncertainty. But the good news is that scientists are getting better at forecasting La Niña events.
That's good.
Sometimes even up to 2 years in advance.
Wow.
Especially after a strong El Niño.
That's impressive. But this brings us to the big question looming over all of this. How does climate change fit into this puzzle?
Yeah.
Will a warmer world throw a wrench into La Niña's usual routine?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And one that has scientists burning the midnight oil.
I bet.
Because here's the thing. As the planet warms, it's like changing the rules of the game for La Niña and El Niño.
Right.
The background conditions these climate patterns operate in are shifting.
Yeah.
And that throws a whole new level of complexity into the mix.
So climate change is like that unpredictable player who throws off everyone's strategy.
Exactly.
What are scientists most worried about when it comes to La Niña in a warmer world?
One of the big concerns is how climate change might impact the frequency and intensity of these events. Some research suggests that we could see more extreme swings between El Niño and La Niña.
Oh, wow.
As global temperatures rise.
So it's not just that they'll happen more often, but they'll be stronger as well.
Exactly. Imagine a climate pendulum. That's not just swinging back and forth, but swinging with more force and at a faster pace.
Wow.
That could mean more frequent and intense droughts, floods, and heat waves across the globe.
That's a pretty alarming thought.
It is a concern.
It sounds like understanding and predicting La Niña is more important than ever.
Absolutely.
Especially for those UPSC aspirants thinking about careers in fields like agriculture, water resource management, or disaster preparedness.
For sure.
Absolutely.
The more accurately we can forecast these events, the better prepared we'll be to deal with the potential consequences.
Right.
It's all about getting ahead of the curve and mitigating those risks.
So it's not just about acing those exams, but about having the knowledge to tackle real-world challenges.
Exactly.
Now, this all sounds pretty daunting.
Yeah.
But is there any hope on the horizon? Are scientists making any headway in figuring out how La Niña will behave in a warmer world?
The good news is that scientists are constantly refining their models and improving their forecasting abilities. They're also learning more about the complex interplay between climate change and these natural climate patterns.
Right.
It's a race against time, for sure.
Yeah.
But we're making progress.
That's reassuring to hear.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway message for our listeners, especially those gearing up for the UPSC exams?
I think the key message is that understanding these climate patterns, like La Niña and El Niño, is no longer just an academic exercise.
Right.
It's about having the knowledge and awareness to navigate a world facing unprecedented climate challenges.
Yeah.
Whether you're aiming for a career in policymaking, agriculture, or disaster management, understanding these dynamics will be crucial.
Well said. This deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
It has.
Taking us from the depth of the Pacific Ocean to the far corners of the globe.
For sure.
We've explored the intricacies of La Niña, its impact on different regions, and the looming shadow of climate change.
Yeah.
For our UPSC aspirants, remember, this information is pure gold for those exams.
Absolutely.
And for everyone else, understanding these climate patterns is crucial for navigating our changing world.
It is.
It's fascinating how Something as seemingly simple as a change in ocean temperature can set off a chain reaction that impacts the entire planet.
It really is.
And it underscores the fact that we're all interconnected, even if we live continents apart.
That's a good point.
That's a powerful thought to end on.
It is.
And remember, folks, this is just one deep dive into a vast ocean of knowledge.
It is.
Hit that subscribe button and give this episode a like so you don't miss out on future explorations.
Yeah, please do.
Until next time, keep those brains curious and stay informed.
Absolutely. Yeah, so while India's farmers might be happy with all that extra rain, their counterparts down in South America could be facing like some really serious crop losses.
Right. It's crazy to think about how that one weather pattern can have such opposite effects in different parts of the world.
It is pretty amazing.
It's a stark reminder of how interconnected our global food systems are.
For sure.
And something that I bet is going to come up on the UPSC Mains exam.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And the irony is, while the South is parched, the northern parts of South America, like Colombia and Venezuela, often see the opposite. Wow. They get increased rainfall and even flooding.
So it's almost like La Niña's playing favorites in a weird way.
It's true.
Right? Some areas get a benefit. Some areas get hammered.
Yeah, it just goes to show that La Niña's impact is all about location. La
Niña, the ultimate real estate agent.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
All right, let's move on to Africa.
Okay.
How does this climate pattern impact such a vast and diverse continent?
Well, just like in South America, you see this stark contrast in La Niña's effects. Depending on what part of Africa you're looking at. East Africa, for example, usually gets hit with drier conditions.
Oh, man, that's not good.
No, especially during those crucial growing seasons.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, it can lead to like reduced crop yields and potential food shortages. Which is a major concern.
Yeah, especially for a region that is already facing a lot of challenges.
Absolutely.
This connection between climate patterns and food security, I mean, that's a major theme in the UPSC syllabus.
It is.
So definitely worth paying attention to.
For sure.
What about Southern Africa?
Okay.
Does La Niña bring the same dry conditions there?
Actually, it's the reverse.
Oh, wow. So the opposite.
Pretty much, yes. Southern Africa often sees above average rainfall during La Niña.
Interesting.
Which is generally good news for their agriculture.
Okay.
You know, crops like maize, sorghum, even soybeans.
Yeah.
They can actually thrive in these wetter conditions.
So even within the same continent, you've got some areas that are benefiting, some areas that are really getting hurt by this one climate pattern.
Absolutely. It really highlights the complexity of these climate patterns.
It does.
And you know how their impacts ripple through different regions, economies, even political landscapes.
Speaking of dramatic landscapes, let's hop over to Oceania.
Okay.
How does La Niña treat Australia?
Australia is particularly sensitive to La Niña.
Okay.
And often not in a good way.
Oh, no. What happens there?
Well, the northern and eastern parts of the country, they typically see a significant increase in rainfall.
Oh, no.
Which often leads to those really widespread and devastating floods.
Yeah, I remember seeing the pictures on the news.
Yeah, it was rough.
It sounds like La Niña is a major player in making these extreme weather events even worse.
It definitely exacerbates things.
This is a perfect example of how understanding climate patterns is crucial for disaster preparedness.
For sure.
Right. And that's another important topic that's likely to come up on the UPSC exams.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, last but not least, let's head north to North America. How does La Niña impact this massive landmass?
Well, North America also gets a taste of those contrasting La Niña effects.
Oh, really? How so?
So the southern states, think like Texas, Arizona, even parts of California, they often experience much drier conditions.
Oh, wow.
But then up north in like Canada and Alaska, it's the complete opposite. More precipitation, stronger storms.
Really?
And just generally wetter weather.
It's a tale of two extremes then.
Yeah, it really is.
A parched south and a soggy north.
La Niña keeps things interesting.
Unpredictable.
That too.
Now, we've talked a lot about La Niña's global impacts.
We have.
But let's zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture here.
Okay.
We keep mentioning this El Niño Southern Oscillation, or ENSO.
Yeah.
Now, for all of our UPSC aspirants out there who might be scratching their heads.
Right.
Can you break down what exactly ENSO is?
Sure.
And how it all ties together?
Of course, think of ENSO as like the grand conductor of the global climate orchestra.
Okay, I like that.
And La Niña is one of its key instruments.
Yes.
So essentially, ENSO is this natural climate pattern that involves changes in the Pacific Ocean's surface temperature.
Right.
And those changes, whether they're warmer or cooler, they have this domino effect on weather patterns around the world.
Wow. So we're talking about rainfall patterns?
Exactly.
Wind strength?
Yeah.
Even the intensity of storms?
That's right. It's all interconnected.
So it was like this puppet master, pulling the strings of global weather.
Yeah.
And La Niña is one of its most dramatic puppets.
Definitely one of the most dramatic.
But how do scientists actually figure out when La Niña is going to show up?
Right.
I mean, do they have some kind of climate crystal ball?
I wish it were that simple. Right. But it does involve some pretty cool technology and some serious brain power.
I bet.
Scientists use a mix of climate models, which are basically these super sophisticated computer simulations of the Earth's climate system. And then they use observational data from things like ocean buoys and satellites.
So they've got eyes everywhere looking for these clues.
Exactly. And all of that data is used to try and predict La Niña events.
Wow. So it's like a global network of climate spies.
That's one way to put it.
Constantly feeding information back to headquarters.
That's right.
That data must be mind-boggling.
Oh, it is huge amounts of data.
How do they make sense of it all?
Well, they're looking for specific patterns and anomalies that signal a La Niña event might be brewing.
Okay. Like what kind of patterns?
Well, for example, they use something called the Oceanic Niño Index.
Okay.
Or ONI for short.
ONI, got it.
Which basically tracks sea surface temperatures in the Pacific and compares them to a 30-year average. So if those temperatures dip below a certain threshold for like a sustained period, bingo.
That's it, La Niña time.
That's right.
So they're like climate detectives.
Exactly.
Looking for these telltale signs hidden within all that data.
That's a good way to put it.
But even with all of this technology and expertise, predicting La Niña must be a challenge.
Right. Absolutely. You're right.
Yeah.
It's a very complex system. And there's always some degree of uncertainty.
Makes sense.
But the good news is that scientists are getting better at forecasting these La Niña events.
That's good.
Sometimes even up to 2 years in advance.
Wow.
Especially after a strong El Niño.
That's pretty impressive.
It is.
But this brings us to the big question that's looming over all of this. How does climate change fit into all of this?
Yeah.
Will a warmer world throw a wrench into La Niña's usual routine?
It's a big question, yeah, and it's one that a lot of scientists are really trying to figure out.
Right, I bet.
Because the thing is, as the planet warms, it's like we're changing the rules of the game for both La Niña and El Niño.
Right.
The background conditions that these climate patterns usually operate in, those are shifting.
Okay.
And that just adds a whole new level of complexity.
Right, climate change, the unpredictable player.
Exactly.
Throwing off everyone's strategy.
That's right.
So what are scientists most worried about when it comes to La Niña in a warmer world?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is how climate change might affect the frequency and the intensity of these events.
Okay.
Like some research suggests that we could actually see more extreme swings between El Niño and La Niña as global temperatures rise.
Oh, wow.
Imagine like a climate pendulum that's not just swinging back and forth, but it's swinging harder. And faster.
Wow.
And that could lead to, more frequent and intense droughts, floods, and heat waves.
Right across the globe.
Exactly.
That's a pretty scary thought.
It is definitely a concern, yeah.
It sounds like understanding and predicting La Niña is more important now than ever.
It really is.
Especially for our listeners out there who are thinking about, careers in fields like agriculture, water resource management, or disaster preparedness.
Absolutely. Understanding these dynamics is going to be critical for those fields.
Right. And we know we've got a lot of UPSC aspirants listening. So this information is pure gold for those exams.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. The better we understand these events, the better prepared we'll be to deal with the potential consequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's not just about acing those exams.
No.
But about having the knowledge to tackle real-world challenges.
Exactly.
This all sounds pretty daunting, though.
It can be, yeah.
Is there any hope on the horizon?
Yeah, there is.
Okay, what are scientists doing?
Well, scientists are always, refining their models and improving their forecasting abilities.
Yeah.
They're learning more about the complex interactions between climate change and these natural climate patterns.
So we're getting better at figuring it out.
We are. It's a race against time.
Yeah.
But we're making progress.
That's reassuring.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway message for our listeners, especially those gearing up for those UPSC exams?
I think the key message here is that understanding these climate patterns, things like La Niña and El Niño, it's not just an academic exercise anymore.
Right. It's real world stuff.
It's about having the knowledge and the awareness to navigate a world that's facing some, unprecedented climate challenges.
Yeah, we're living in a different world than we used to.
We are.
So whether someone's aiming for a career in policymaking, agriculture, or disaster management, understanding these dynamics is going to be crucial. Well said. This deep dive has really been eye-opening.
It has been.
Taking us from the depths of the Pacific Ocean to the far corners of the globe.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We explored La Niña, its impact on different regions, and that looming shadow of climate change. And for our UPSC aspirants, remember?
Yes.
This information is pure gold for those exams.
Absolutely.
And for everyone else understanding these climate patterns, it's just crucial for navigating our changing world.
I agree.
It really is amazing to think that something as simple as a change in ocean temperature can set off a chain reaction that impacts the entire planet.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It is, and it just underscores the fact that we're all interconnected. Even though we live continents apart.
It's a small world.
That's a really powerful thought to end on.
It is.
And remember, folks, this is just one deep dive into a vast ocean of knowledge.
That's right.
Hit that subscribe button.
Yeah, please do.
Give this episode a like so you don't miss out on future explorations.
We'd appreciate it.
Until next time, keep those brains curious.
Yeah.
And stay informed.
Absolutely.